Welcome to the Season 4 of the India Energy Hour podcast. This podcast explores the most pressing hurdles and promising opportunities of India's energy transition through an in-depth discussion on policies, financial markets, social movements and science. Your host for this episode is Shreya J., Delhi-based energy and climate journalist. The show is produced by 101 Reporters, a pan-India network of grassroots reporters that produces original stories from rural India. If India has to meet its climate goals, it'd take much more than large solar and wind power projects. For green energy to become a way of life among Indian citizens, the route is through decentralized solutions generating at the consumption end. From rooftop solar to microgrids running on green solutions, decentralized or off-grid renewable energy projects solve the issue of transmission, line loss and bring in energy efficiency at the end of the consumer. To understand the science and the economics behind decentralized solutions, we talked with Dr. Debajit Palit. Dr. Debajit Palit has a PhD in energy policy and an MSc in physics. He is currently professor in NTPC School of Business. He has dabbled in roles of professor, corporate leader, author and researcher.
Welcome to the India Energy Hour. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's an honor to have you here. You have had a very interesting career spanning various institutions and various areas of interest, a lot of which is in the area that this podcast covers. So we are very happy to have you here. We have been trying to get you for quite some time. So thank you again for joining us here at the India Energy Hour.
Thank you, Shreya, for having me in this podcast. Let me at the outset compliment and congratulate the India Energy Hour for this series of podcasts. I happen to listen to some of them, this one, and especially on the energy transition. I think this series will go a long way to create awareness among all the stakeholders. So, really honored to be part of this podcast.
Thanks again. Thank you. Before we jump into this topic, which is very interesting and something that we confess that we have not explored enough, and I believe the country as a whole, in terms of policy, also has not explored it enough. We'll discover it as we discuss it forward. But before we jump into that, we want our listeners to know about you. You have had, as I mentioned earlier, a very long and interesting career. You have worked with variety of organizations. So, can you tell us about yourself? Where are you from? What did you study? And how did you land up in this particular sector and now are working, at a microcosm of another sector altogether, energy transition meets climate change. So please tell us about your
Uh,
journey.
well, the, I am from Guwahati. That's the northeastern part of this country. This one, all my life, I have, or rather, all my student life, I have been there, born and brought up in Guwahati. I did my graduation and post graduation in physics from the Guwahati University, and my specialization was in solid state physics, and that's how where I first got to know about the solar sector. That means something, and got to see actually in our lab how the solar panels or the solar cells are being produced. That means as an experimental stage, and that's from there the interest in, I would say, started. Basically, I was excited by how solar radiation can produce electricity, and after completing my post graduation in physics, I joined the Tejpur Central University to do a course on postgraduate diploma in non-conventional energy technology, and that was way back in 1996. At that time, probably very few institutes in India had a course on renewable energy or non-conventional energy technologies. And in retrospect, I feel that I had taken a risk at that time. I was not knowing anything much about the sector, whether there would be opportunities in the sector going ahead or not. I was not knowing, but just uh, the term excited me, and I joined the course. And thankfully, uh, it was a good course. This one I learned a lot of things there. I- Incidentally, I also topped the batch. That was the first batch in '96, And for the first time, I had the opportunity to visit a DRE project, a micro hydro power plant, 1.5 megawatt, in a place called Sesa in West Kameng district of Arunachal Pradesh, way back in 1996. So you can remember it's almost probably 28 years back. This one, a lot of people were joining the DRE sector. Now, probably my experience in the sector is more than their age. This one. As part of the course, we also did a project. We have to prepare a plan, that's integrated rural energy plan for a block, and that introduced me to many other DRE technologies like a solar lantern, a solar home lighting system, biogas plant, and so on and so forth. And I could see very close how these systems work. What are the operational difficulties? What are the advantages or disadvantages of the systems? And as part of my project work there in that course, I designed an improved mud stove with more than 30% efficiency. I still vividly remember working in the Assam Energy Development Agency lab and developing the stove and testing the stove, and was very excited to see that the efficiency was probably uh, one of the highest efficiency stove at that point of time. Now we have a lot of stoves which have more than 30% efficiency, but at that point of time there are very few stoves which had that type of efficiency. Then after that, I passed after my passing out from there. Uh, as you know, Northeast is still not a very developed region. So at that time, it was very underdeveloped, and we didn't have a lot of opportunities, job opportunities there. So I had to join a marketing company, not in the renewable energy sector, but something different. But then after working there for about 1.5 years, I felt that probably this is not the best opportunity for me, and not the type of job that I should do. I should join some research uh, where I think I felt I could do better, and that's how I joined TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute. TERI used to have or still have a Northeast Regional Center, but at that time it was very small. Hardly 3 or 4 people are working there. And in 1998, I joined TERI as a research associate. And the first project that I was given to undertake is the evaluation of renewable energy technologies, especially distributed renewable energy, which were implemented by the Northeastern Council. And probably very few people would be knowing the Northeastern Council actually started implementing distributed renewable energy, especially for rural areas, way back in the early 1980s, even before the Ministry of Non-Conventional Energy Sources started having their rural energy programs. This one, and we were asked to evaluate the these distributed renewable energy systems that have been implemented in different states in the rural areas during the last 5 years from that when we this one from that time. And I got the opportunity to visit almost all the states in northeastern region, hands on, see all the technologies, evaluate them. Now when you are evaluating a technology, you also have to learn more about the technology, and that I would say helped me to learn a lot about these technologies, all these distributed renewable energy technologies, whether it is a solar power plant or a solar home system, solar lanterns, um, biogas plant, improved cook stoves, mini micro hydro systems, water mills, and so on and so forth. So that is, I would say, is a starting point for me to get exposure to all types of DRE uh, implemented in remote villages in the northeastern region. Then, after working there for around 7 years or so, doing a lot of other projects on behalf of TERI in the northeastern region, I shifted from Guwahati to Delhi and joined the distributed generation and rural electrification team in Delhi. Thereafter, in 2007-8, I was given the responsibility of leading the Lighting a Billion Lives team. TERI, as you might be knowing, implemented its flagship program called Lighting a Billion Lives, whereby we could impact more than 5 million lives of people. And it was me who, uh, with guidance from Dr. Pachori and my director at that time, Dr. Akanksha Chore, designed and completely designed the program, the including the way it should be implemented, what should be the financial model, what should be the technical model, and so on and so forth. And that gave me a lot of experience in the sector. Then in again around the same time, I also got an opportunity again on behalf of Terry to work in a distributed generation and supply project for the World Bank and for the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, who were implementing the Village Energy Security Program. And I had the opportunity to visit a number of projects across different states in India to actually firsthand see what are the good and bad of this project, what is working, what is not working, why it is not working, and learn from those lessons. Then I shifted my focus to undertake projects in Africa. I had the opportunity to travel to almost 12 countries in Africa, help UNIDO prepare distributed renewable energy projects, especially solar power plant and other types of project in both in West Africa and also some countries in East Africa. And then finally, from 2012 onwards, for almost a decade, I led the decentralized energy solution, and then the rural energy and livelihood division in Cherry. And then finally, in um, first part of 2022, I thought that now it's time to also explore the academic sector, and that's how I landed up in NTPC School of Business, where I'm teaching now the energy in transition course and distributed generation and microgrids course here to the students. So that's how what has been my journey all along from the day I joined the sector in 90, I would say in 1996, after passing out from my master degree in physics.
Very fascinating journey, I must say, Dr. Palit. Very interesting. And when you were talking about all these earlier solutions about decentralized renewable energy, I happen to remember all those solar cookers, which was such a novelty back then in the 90s. Every other household used to have it, and these small shops which were started, which used to have these solar lamps by the state government
Right.
and some by the central government to popularize solar solutions. And it were it was a novelty as a kid, to lay hand on something like this. uh, but things have moved forward. One would like to believe that decentralized renewable energy solutions are not just that anymore, not just a solar lamp or a mobile charger. Is much more than that. And given your body of work, as I understand from that, it does bring change, the kind of change that a decentralized solution can bring to far-flung areas, is something that brings a socio-economic change in that particular area. Can you explain in India what all does decentralized renewable energy solution comprises of? I know it's a very broad question, but at policy level, if we can say so, and at program or a scheme level, what does it comprises, and what is the status, if you can give it us in some way in terms of megawatt or in terms of reach? If you can explain us, please.
Well, so decentralized energy solution or renewable energy solution, as the name suggests, comprises of two separate things. One is decentralized, so which means that it is closer to the consumer or to the point of consumption. And renewable energy, as you all know, as everybody would be knowing, is uh, the energy which is, I would say, uh, inexhaustible or can be replenished, like solar energy or wind energy, biomass, uh, hydro, and so on and so forth. This one. So, decentralized renewable energy is something that can be defined as uh, something where electricity is generated near to the point of use or consumption. So, it could be a solar home systems or a rooftop solar, which are more common nowadays, or a individual or domestic biogas plant, or a small gasifier, or a micro hydropower plant, or any livelihood applications based on small solar or wind or biomass gasifier, like a solar loom, a solar grinding machine, or a solar mills, renewable energy based cold storage, and so on and so forth. This one now, interestingly. India actually started implementing decentralized renewable energy when the ministry, or rather the earlier avatar of the ministry, which was the Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources, or before that, the Commission for Additional Sources of Energy, they first started implementing this decentralized renewable energy only. A lot of people may not be knowing a very interesting story I would like to share here. The Commission for Additional Sources of Energy, which was started as a department under the Department of Science and Technology, that means a cell under the Department of Science and Technology, I think in the late 1970s. So they had developed uh, a energy village, or a Urja Gram, what we call it in Hindi, which is called in a village named Masudpur, which is the present day Vasant Kunj. And they implemented all this DRE system, the small biogas plant, solar home systems, improved cook stove, solar lanterns, and all these things there. And the honorable Prime Minister of that time, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, happened to visit that particular village, and she got so impressed with the systems. And this is something that the story I got to know during while doing my PhD work, while researching on renewable energy, the evolution of renewable energy in India. And she got so impressed that she this one, the Commission for Additional Sources of Energy was made into a Department of Non-Conventional Energy Sources in 1982. And that's how a separate department was formed for the promotion of renewable energy in India. So that's the story behind the formation of the what we now know. This one is called the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. This one. So that's how it evolved from there. So you can say that at that time, most of these small renewable energy systems are being implemented in the rural areas, primarily to provide energy services to off-grid population. And I would say this has done some good and some bad also. If I see the in retrospect the evolution of the sector, why good? Because it helped to reach out to the rural population in the remote areas to have some sort of energy devices, efficient energy devices for them to use. It created the necessary awareness in the rural areas. But at the same time, why bad? I feel because you won't find any technology dissemination taking place from the rural areas and then coming to the urban areas. Probably this is the only technology in India where it has started to happen in the rural areas, and that too in the remote rural areas, and then it gradually started moving towards the cities and the towns. Um, this one. And because of that, I think many of the problems started happening from there. What we see that it has not been able to scale up. There are a lot of challenges in implementing DRE system. This could be one of the reasons that it started to happening in the rural areas, in areas where it was very difficult to provide the maintenance services. And because of that, the system started to fail, and it created a negative impact on the mind of the users. And that's why it took time, so long a time, for mainstreaming of these technologies, or this one as a, I would say, uh, as something which which is so good use. This one, now we are realizing that these technologies are of great use. But I think in between, this technology somewhere faulted because of the maintenance was weak, and still we are discussing about the similar issues what we used to discuss 20 years back. So there, I think we have not things have not changed the way it should have changed in the last 20 years. Still there are many things that needs to be done. I will discuss more about it as we go along, this one. But yes, of course, uh, things have changed. Some of the things have changed for the good, and I think that's a positive thing. And now we have a lot of schemes coming up on distributed renewable energy or decentralized renewable energy. And I'm sure that going ahead, distributed renewable energy will have much more use than what it is now.
But do you also think that decentralized solutions have also suffered because of the mindset? As it is not a grid connected electricity. If some engineers are going to a village, they are just carrying solar panels and batteries. They're not, erecting transmission towers and big wires. These Most of the villages have this mindset that this is a pit stop solution, and till the time grid electricity comes in. And now with electrification going so aggressive in the country, this mindset plus pit stop solutions somewhere led to a lacuna in the acceptance towards decentralized. Do you think so that is a
Yeah,
problem?
absolutely. I fully agree with you. And one of the reasons, as I said, that is that the government, the way the government has promoted it as a not as a permanent way of addressing the problem, but as a stopgap solution. This one key, you take it now, and will provide you a better system later when the grid can reach there. Now the grid is not say the villagers are told that it is economically daunting to take the grid to these areas, and so we are giving you a maybe a mini grid connection or a solar home systems. So the way it has been implemented, I think that narrative was not proper. The one and two, the villagers has always thought about what they call it equivalent electricity. Now the way the systems have been designed in the 90s and 2000, when this mini grid program was started, or solar home systems and other things, they were designed for say 4 hours or 5 hours or maybe 6 hours, whereas the grid was providing larger amount of electricity for longer duration of this hours. So the villagers were always looked at the grid as a permanent solution rather, and these off-grid systems as a temporary solution, or what they call it in some of the Hindi speaking state as a choti bijli. This one, so that has always been there. It continues to be so in some cases, not in all cases. But then the narrative is gradually changing now with more of the decarbonization happening, the decentralization is taking place, and the digitalization of the technologies are taking place. So I think these decentralized technologies are now getting more mainstream than what it used to be earlier.
Absolutely. Before we get into the government policy schemes part, I also wanted to understand from you, given that you have worked in this particular area of, energy poverty nexus or water energy food nexus. There is a thought that decentralized solutions are much more effective when it comes to tackling problems of this particular nexus. Can you explain that?
Yeah, absolutely. To yes, to a large extent, they can address many of the problems that of the main grid. The main grid, though though the government of India has extended electricity to all the census villages, but still the provision of electricity supply, that is the flow of electrons in the wire, is still a problem in many of the states, especially in the rural areas, and that's something that the state government are supposed to undertake. But we all know the discoms are in a very bad financial condition in many of the states, and that is creating a lot of problem for providing 24 by 7 quality supply. I think the government has now fixed a target for 2025 to provide 24 by 7 quality supply in all the villages. But this target has been set uh, the number of times. This one, so I'm not sure whether 2025 also would be able to provide. But having said that, I think in many cases, distributed renewable energy can address the problem, uh, especially for providing, say, some of the like a solar pump. Definitely, a solar pump is a much better technology for providing irrigation supply in the to the farmers than a diesel pump. Diesel pump is not only the operational costs are high, the fuel cost is high, but also it is not clean. So a solar pump is now almost cost competitive with it, or in some cases much better than a diesel pump. This one, in providing the same amount of water at a lesser price. Or a rooftop solar system is an excellent solution now. Or a rooftop solar in schools and hospitals, primary health centers is a much better solution. Some of the states have already implemented, and a state like Chhattisgarh, where they have implemented almost 100% rooftop solar systems in primary health center, they've got an Ashton Award for that. This one. So we have examples from various states which shows that this distributed renewable energy systems or small solar systems are definitely providing much better reliable supply, to not just to meet the household load, the lighting load, but also to provide electricity for productive use or electricity for community use or public, or electricity in public places. This one. But having said that, I would like to mention one point here. Having someone having worked in the sector for quite long time, more than 2 decades, uh, this one, no, one thing that I have observed is that that means those who work in the distributed renewable energy sector or the decentralized energy sector, sometimes we are very emotional, and we are not, sometimes we don't do a thing from a practical perspective. Let me give an example what I mean by that. So we sometimes, the sector experts, we try to this one, provide the best anecdotal evidence of DRE compared to the worst anecdotal evidence of the grid, instead of doing an apple to apple comparison. So I think that's very important, because we are not competing. We should not think that we are competing against the grid. It should always be, we should think that it is a complementing the grid, and that's why it is important that we undertake a, this one, a more objective analysis of the sector. Now, no independent empirical survey has been done in large scale, at a pan India scale, for the DRE system. Whatever work has been done, the impact survey, this has been done by, say, some agencies have implemented a project, and they have done the impact survey for their funding agency, and that, so those surveys sometimes are also biased, right? So I think it's very important then, if you have to do a cross country empirical, large scale empirical survey for the DRE systems, not to find fault, but to learn lessons, what has worked, what has not worked, and how we can make the systems better. That would have given us a lot of insights about why systems are, if they are not working, then why they are not working, and what we should do to make them work. Similar studies have been done for the grid scale. You will find a lot of studies undertaken by different agencies for impact assessment of the grid sector, the main grid sector. But I think this one, other than some small anecdotal evidence here and there, we don't have a large scale survey done for the DRE sector. So that's something that should be done. This is number one. Number two is, again, technology is some is these small technologies. So these all depend on the degree or the level of technology customization for their success. But when we talk about customization, that doesn't mean that for every different application we have to customize the technology. Let me give an example here. You won't find a diesel generator, say, of 11 kVA or 113 kVA or something like that, right? There are some standard capacity of diesel generator. There are some standard capacity of all other technology system. But I have seen in the DRE sector, the expectation is that if I have to design a power plant of, say, a certain capacity, I that means the sector, those who want to implement, the demand that I should get an inverter of that particular capacity. Now it is not possible that way, and if it, technically it is possible, but then without those standardization, the sector doesn't move forward. Let me give an example here. The mini grid program in Chhattisgarh is considered to be very successful. They have implemented almost 1,000 more than 1,000 mini grids, and most of them are running. I think as on date, probably 800 to 900 mini grids are in operational condition. Now they standardize the capacity of these mini grids, so that in case there is a fault in any one mini grid, they can easily change the inverter, uh, by having a spare inverter in that cluster of villages, and that help them to uh, quickly rectify the systems or make the systems operational again, right? If they would not have done that, then it would have become very difficult for to take an inverter from the village, go to the nearest service station, get it rectified, and then put it back in the village. It would have taken time. Now that was sorted out by having a spare inverter, a standardized spare inverter. So they designed all the power plants like one kilowatt, 3 kilowatt, and 5 kilowatt, something like that, right? If the load is say 2.5 kilowatt, they would rather put up a 3 kilowatt system rather than putting up 2.5 kilowatt. So that made things much better. So I think those type of innovations has not taken place in all cases. Now things are more standardized, more organized, I would say. The DRE market is also getting organized now. It is maybe 10 years back or 20 years back, it was not that organized. This one. So things are, as I said earlier, things are moving in the right direction, and I'm sure that um, it will still move in a better. This one, it will progress further.
Right, absolutely. Innovation is one thing. Innovation and technology usually develop over time, and as you mentioned, it's now that the things are falling into place. But let's talk about the policy push. For the last decade, or I'll say a last decade or 10, 12 years, the focus has been on grid connected renewable energy solutions, because as a country, we wanted to achieve certain megawatts, achieve a certain price for solar, wind, and other such solutions. So DRE took a back seat. Correct me if I am wrong. As a policy push, the for DRE was missing. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And where do things stand now?
So the DRE was a primary program for the ministry till, I think, till the solar mission, national solar mission, was launched in 2010. Till that time, I think mostly it is the rural areas where the distributed renewable energy are being promoted. The ministry used to have a number of programs. The national program on biogas development, which started in the 80s. The national program on improved cook stove, the solar PV demonstration program, the remote village electrification, as part of which, which started in 2001 or 2002, as part of which solar home systems and mini grids were supported to different states to electrify the remote areas. So I would say that till 2010, DRE programs are flagship programs of the ministry. But after the launch of National Solar Mission in 2010, and with the price of solar decreasing, I think the policy push start. That means the government also started to focus more on the centralized solar sector. The wind, anyway, was a centralized phenomenon right from the 90s, when the wind program started to be promoted. This one, but centralized solar got a push after the national solar mission, and with the decrease in price, the further got the push, and the government also thought that with India government making commitments in 2015 at the Paris Climate Agreement, the Paris COP, Conference of Parties, the this one, it was felt that we have to do something big, and that's how the centralized solar got the push. But as I said earlier, with decentralization and digitalization, I think DRE uh, is getting the push. Very recently, the rooftop solar program was, I would say, it was there earlier also, but I think at a much larger scale, it has been launched now. We used to have around um, 10, I think less than 10 lakh systems have been implemented rooftop solar, but now there is a plan to implement 1 crore. So it is an exponential expansion. So things are falling in place. I think the government has also realized that uh, distributed solar should be given the importance, and more so because India is a land deficient country. So you cannot just push utility solar up beyond a certain scale. That means you have to have this decentralized solar if we are to expand the solar sector as a whole. So yeah, so I think things are now falling in place, and DRE sector is getting its due, which probably for a decade or so it was at the back.
Right, and good you mentioned land, because I like to think that land was the tipping point. How much land can you anyway have to build, 500 gigawatt by this decade? So though we are not sure yet that these decentralized scheme will go into the total of 500 gigawatt that we are trying to touch, but you mentioned the rooftop solar scheme, the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, then Kusum has been running for the past 2 3 years. There are several other such schemes. You must have studied them. What has been the impact of these schemes? Let's start with, say, Kusum, which started with quite a bang, has several components, is working in different states, and every state has a similar scheme of its own as well. And it targets a very specific electricity consumer, which is the farmers and the agriculture segment. And now with rooftop scheme, which you mentioned was going on, but now will come into a new avatar, what has been the major takeaways? What has been the impact on the ground?
So, well, Kusum has three components, and I think, as far as I know, the except the off-grid solar pumps component, the other components has not done so well. Uh, Between these three, that means out of these three components, I think the off-grid solar pumps has done relatively better than the other two components. The first component has not been very successful because the farmers, uh, it is that means the farmers are supposed to put up solar power plant in their the land where they don't cultivate or and feed the electricity to the grid. I think that component has not found many takers. In the component C, if this one, the a new flexibility has been provided that project developers can now work with the farmers and they can also solarize the feeder. So instead of putting up the solar pumps uh, connected to the grid, the feeder can itself be solarized by having solar power, say 2 megawatt solar power plant, and connect all the pumps with, that means which are otherwise being supplied with normal grid electricity, they can be supplied with solar electricity. I think that component will that means I feel that it will be successful because for the simple reason that the cost to supply electricity to the farmers are quite high, whereas for the same electricity from solar you can get it right at the near to the farmers land at a much cheaper price. So for the discom it will be a win-win scenario because they will save a lot of money by having such type of system implemented near to the farmers field. And with private developers getting in, the viability will also increase because there will be more takers now. So I'm hopeful that this particular model will start now working. But having said that, I think there are challenges of implementing PM Kusum. The Of course, the central government is providing subsidy, 30% subsidy. The state government are expected to provide 30% subsidy. Not all state governments have a lot of money to provide that subsidy, and the farmers are supposed to take 40% loan from the bank. But again, for a solar pumps, because this in India, as you know, mostly it is the marginal and small farmers. For them to take 40% loan is also sometimes difficult. So that is one of the reasons why it is not. I mean, we have not seen huge scale up of the program in many of the states. Not in all states, but in many of the states. In some states, it has been very successful. This one, rooftop solar, similarly, now the central government has taken it on them and it's directly providing subsidy. They've also increased the subsidy amount as part of this Surya Ghar program. But earlier, in this earlier avatar, this program also had a lot of limitation. One, the Gujarat has done a lot of good work, primarily because of this one. No, what they have done is that they created the necessary awareness among the beneficiaries or the prospective beneficiaries. They've created a pool of EPC contractors who can implement the solar program. The subsidy disbursement was made easy by using a portal, and that all these things helped Gujarat to have the type of numbers that they have achieved. Almost 60%, I think, if I know correctly, almost 60% of the residential rooftop solar system that has been implemented in India is from Gujarat. This one. Now, other states also has to follow a similar model. The awareness has been a big issue. Not all states are uh, doing what they should do for creating that necessary awareness. Two, there are still ambiguity between the net metering and gross metering. I think those ambiguities needs to be cleared, so that we the consumers exactly know what type of metering is going to be implemented. The time for the discom should have a time frame to implement or to allow the metering or do the interconnection. So all these things have to be done in a much faster process, and I think the new program is going to take care of all these problems, this one. And that's why the if I know correctly, the new programs is being is going to be implemented by the central public sector undertakings, who will have who by this one, they will help the state government in implementing the program. So I think this will make the implementation much faster, this one. So yes, we had our problems. I think we have learned from those problems, and things are definitely should be easier now, this one. The other point that I would like to make here is that we should have, that means for such a large program, we should have enough number of uh, aggregators or solar integrators, and for that we have to do a lot of capacity building, and also engage a lot of entrepreneurs who can get into the business. This one, the big farms also need to come into this business. Unless it is done in and an ecosystem is developed, this one, around the decentralized solar, uh, the success rate will not be the what we want to achieve. So these are very important things which needs to be done. I'll just add a point here, and it will be very interesting for your audience to know. This one, we are now talking about Atmanirbhar Bharat and production link incentive. And while I was doing some research of my old papers 20 years back, I remember I making a recommendation based on the survey of the NEC projects that I just mentioned initially, to that I made that recommendation to NEC, of course, this one, that NEC should promote manufacturing of products at the local level to reduce cost and provide production based incentive to the entrepreneurs to scale up the distributed renewable energy programs that NEC were implementing. So I'm happy to see that what I suggested 20 years back, or maybe more than that, this one, now it is being implemented by the federal government. So that's something that is very happy to find.
That's great. Congrats on that. Can you elaborate a bit on it, please? What exactly were the recommendations now that have been incorporated?
So based on the evaluation that we had conducted for the Northeastern Council, we found that most of the technology, of course, we found that around 60% of the technologies that implemented were functional, and the reason of non-functionality, one of the reasons was that it was very difficult for the installer, whoever has installed the system, to reach out to those remote areas in case of any fault and rectify the system. So it might happen that Northeast at that time had no manufacturer or installer. So most of the manufacturer or the installer were from the rest of India, maybe from UP, maybe from Bengal, maybe from Delhi and other places. And once they have implemented or installed the system, they were not ready to go there and in case of any fault. And necessary maintenance was not created, this one, no, though there was a provision for capacity building. So we had recommended that let the Northeastern Council provide some production linked incentive for local manufacturing of the systems in the Northeastern region, so that they are more closer to the villages where they would be implementing the system. uh, this one. So we talked it from an Atmanirbhar region at that time. This one, to make northeastern region self-sufficient in having not just for manufacturing the systems, but also for providing the after sales and all the necessary support that would be required for the operationalizing or making the system sustainable.
No, very, very interesting. And I think we can go back to the point that you mentioned about how now central utilities are coming in to run these DRE schemes, which would bring in better efficiency, coupled with the recommendations that you have talked about, does looks like an efficient model. We now will see how it is implemented across the country. If we can talk a little bit more about the rooftop solar scheme, the PM Surya Ghar Yojana, rooftop in different formats, or rooftop solar in different formats, have been experimented both at central and state level. The center has tried to, push targets, has tried to get, corporates also to do some rooftop. It has had, limited success. State governments are also trying to have rooftop solar at least a commercial or an industrial level, having RWAs, building societies, etc., to have rooftop solar in order to meet different variety of targets. What are some of the key challenges as a sector that rooftop solar faces? Is it lack of capacity, lack of supply, or lack of demand, or just pure lack of awareness?
I think yes, lack of awareness definitely is something that will that means if we can create more awareness among the consumers, the prospective consumers, it will drive the demand. If I am a consumer, if I want to buy a rooftop solar system, then what are things that I would look at this one. Now, if I am in a peri-urban area, now what was happening is that the government subsidy program was not covering. In fact, the government was not providing subsidy if I want to say install a battery with my system. So if I know correctly, the government was not providing any subsidy to such systems. This are no grid connected systems. If I want to put up a battery, now just um, think about a system in a peri-urban area where there is a power cut in the evening, and if I don't have a battery connected to the system, then despite investing so much amount, uh, I won't be able to get say electricity for lighting in the evening hours, right? This one, then why should I implement a system? So that was a major problem for the rooftop solar systems when it was being implemented at the state level, till a few years back, I would say. Now I think the government allows a battery to be implemented with the system, but of course the subsidy doesn't cover the cost of battery. So if I want to implement a battery, I can do it on my own. The subsidy would be only on the solar panel and on the balance of system, the control and the charge controller and other things, the inverter and other things. This one. So this is one major problem: the awareness and the technology design. The third is about the after sales, whether we are able to create the necessary and responsive maintenance infrastructure in every places or not. There are a lot of small companies which are coming up. Are they going to provide the warranty and guarantee that they're supposed to provide? Now, a solar panel is life is 25 years. Is the company going to run for 25 years? We actually don't know. What is the mechanism that has been created by which if I implement a rooftop solar system in my roof, so who is giving me the assurance that for the next 25 years, no matter whether the company exists or doesn't exist, you will still get your after sales service? So how we are going to make that happen? So there should be some ways and means to make that happen. This one, there should the we have to create or those models. This one, so big companies are some now at least some big companies are coming into the sector, but otherwise the sector is still unorganized. So we have to organize the sector. We have to create the necessary confidence among the consumers and all the stakeholders that yes, if you take a rooftop solar system, you will get the service that uh, you deserve, right? Let me take an example from the automobile sector, because everybody buys a car or a two wheeler. Now, why some of the companies in India, this one was, I'm not taking name, but some of the companies in India are they sell much almost 3-4 times more than the other companies, because they have created the necessary confidence in the among the consumers that they are at every corner in India to provide the service support, right? So we have to develop the sector in such a manner. So this is something which we have to do. Third, about the subsidy disbursement, all along we have seen, and I gave an example from Gujarat. This one, the subsidy disbursement by the state nodal agencies is a very time consuming so it takes a lot of time for a solar integrator to get the subsidy disbursed from the state nodal agencies responsible for renewable energy development for whatever reasons. This one. So now, if somebody has invested some money and if they don't get the subsidy in time, they don't have enough capital to reinvest in the sector. So that has been a big problem, and I think now with the central government directly taking care of the rooftop solar system, probably the subsidy disbursement will be much faster now, with the federal agencies taking care of it. This one. So yes, so I would say these are some of the problems which needs to be addressed, and we need to be a little bit careful about, not instead of creating a hype. I think we need to be a little bit careful about how we are implementing the systems. Monitoring is extremely essential. We also need to monitor how the systems are working, and in case we are finding some fault or some challenges in implementing, there should be a feedback mechanism by which we should be able to rectify those challenges and make things better.
I agree with all what you said. I'll just like to discuss one problem. I'm not sure is that a problem, just a curiosity. In comparison to say a grid connected renewable energy projects where we have seen so many private companies get in, so much interest from private companies, be it manufacturing of wind, solar, or independent power producers. Decentralized has not seen that. Is returns a problem, or is what you mentioned is a problem, that there is a lack of surety for the consumer also, and for the private player as well, that there is no model as such? Why was a model not developed similar to grid connected for decentralized? Just a curiosity there.
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think very this one very important question. Let me say what a leading power sector industry professional is. This one during one discussion, that means basically one stakeholder discussion we had with him. He said that if I get better returns elsewhere, why should I invest in the DRE sector? Or rather, he was talking about the mini grid sector. This one. So that I'm
Right,
talking.
right.
This is something. This discussion was in around 2010. This one. So you can understand, and this was a big power company. This one. So you can understand what was the feeling at that time. Right. If we make an investment in the other sectors and get a better returns, then why should I get into the DRE or the rural energy sector? I think that then there's been a paradigm shift from there. Now companies are coming forward. There are many companies in which are now venturing into the sector. You can see a lot of companies have now started implementing mini grids, including some of the big private sector power companies in India. They are also implementing mini grids, and I'm sure that if they have taken a decision to implement mini grids, they must have seen some business opportunity going ahead. Otherwise, they are not going to do it just as part of their philanthropy, right? They see it as a business opportunity, and that's why they are implementing, which is a good sign. There are a number of big companies who have now opened a division to implement. That means within their company, they have started divisions to implement rooftop solar programs, again, which is a very good sign. This one. But as I said earlier, I think the sector has been very disorganized. uh, I won't say fully unorganized, and we need to organize the sector. There should be a voice of the sector. Of course, there are some agencies who are doing that, but I think the voice is yet to be that strong. Uh, like the large scale solar power sector now has voice in the form of federation or association, or the wind energy developers has a voice in the form of federation or association. But I think in case of DRE, we don't have any recognized association or federation. This one, it is very important that there should be one. This one, every other industry has an association or a federation. I think the DRE sector uh, is yet to have an official association or federation. Yeah, if I am not wrong. this one. So those, so to push your ideas and what is your requirement from the ministry or from the government, I think you need to have a voice. So this is something that from the industry side, I would suggest that it should be there. Two, the industry should also be prepared to have some sort of regulation, product regulation, performance regulation. Not every product should be allowed to be implemented. We have a lot of these imported product from some countries, very cheap quality products, solar lamps and solar lights, which are being disseminated or implemented in the rural areas at a very cheap price, and these are also creating a lot of negative impact. They may be very, the price may be very low, but the maintenance is not there. The product goes wrong, and then a good quality products also get a bad name because of this poor quality product. So there should be some regulation, standardization. Uh, I am part of the Bureau of Indian Standards (BIS) Low Voltage DC Application Systems Committee, and we have seen that early. That means we got representation that a lot of these LVDC microgrids have been implemented in India at different places, and then we realized that we should have some standardization and standards for this the LVDC systems, and we uh, that means we sat and we developed standards for LVDC committee, and you will be very happy to know that the standards has now been recognized by the International Electrotechnical Commission (IEC) and has now been considered as an international standard. So all these different products that are that you need for the DRE sector should get standardized. That would help the sector. The manufacturers or the developers should not feel bad that uh, the standardization might impact their sale. Maybe in the shorter term it might impact, but over a period of time it will help the sector. So I think both from the manufacturer side and also from the consumer side and from the government side, I think there are things that needs to be done to make the sector more organized, uh, better, this one with better standards, and of course better unambiguous policies. Ambiguous policies has been one of the major lacuna in the sector, like a mini grid. If you are to implement a mini grid in the rural areas, uh, we still don't know what treatment the mini grid would get if there is a grid. There are some policies which has been formulated by some of the states, but the policies has been a non-starter. This one still we can see in UP, in villages in UP and Bihar and Jharkhand, the mini grid and the grid have parallel lines in the villages. Why should there be a parallel infrastructure? Why can't we interconnect this mini grid with the grid? Why can't we have a policy on that? And a objective policy on that, not something which is not good for the industry or for the developer. So all stakeholders should sit together and design something good which can help the sector to grow. Let me just say one point here: the rooftop solar program. Say the rooftop solar is will have 10 million rooftops going ahead as part of the government program. Now, can these rooftops start speaking with each other? Can all these consumers who would be putting up rooftop solar in their house, can they become prosumers and start energy trading? What should be the what type of regulation should be there to allow the energy trading? So those are the type of things that are important for us to get an answer for this, to have more policy certainty and to take forward the sector.
These sound to me very, very helpful recommendations. I hope the powers that be are listening to these. I'm sure that these kind of changes would definitely change the face of DRE in the country. I want to close this conversation with a very consumer oriented question, if I may. DRE has been, the experiment of DRE started with rural areas, if I can say so, because there was an immediate need. The second bigger segment that is emerging right now is the commercial segments, because they have their own green targets to meet. Then energy costs are soaring high, so renewable looks like a probable solution, and a lot of them are adopting it in variety of formats: rooftop, signing up. mini grids, etc. But a big chunk of consumer is the domestic segment, which, as you said, is not unorganized, slightly disorganized. And I'm talking about both urban and rural consumers. When the domestic consumers, there is a lot of potential for rooftop mini grids, etc. There, do you think that it needs a further policy push, or just an awareness that would help? Is there a one size fits all approach to it? Because each and every state is running its own program, but there's something amiss, that the kind of acceptance that one would want for, say, rooftop or mini grids is not there. So if I may ask, as a consumer and variety of consumers listening to this episode, how and where, how to approach rooftop and mini grids?
Well, so I would say we need both. And in fact, more than that, we need awareness, we need a policy push, we need better financing model, uh, we need a more organized sector, the sectoral approach. Basically, what I'm trying to say that we should work out a more from an ecosystem development than looking at a piecemeal basis on each of these things. And rooftop is not independent on its own. We have to see it from a distributed renewable energy perspective, not just for household application, but also probably for DRE for livelihoods, DRE for other sectors, right? So as I mentioned about the land problem, and I think DRE can resolve to a large extent this land issue, the challenges that we might face because of paucity of land in India for the renewable energy. What I say is that we have to implement distributed renewable or solar wherever it is feasible and possible. And to make it feasible, these are technologically everything is feasible. We have to also make it commercially feasible and also institutionally feasible. So I think what we lack in India is also institutions which can take this rooftop solar to different set of consumers. You cannot have a one size fit all approach, but what the federal government can provide is more of a boundary condition for implementation, the do's and don'ts, and the boundary within which these programs could be implemented. Different states can design their own business model, own institutional model, and what type of technology they want to implement. Uh, for example, Kerala can have its own model. Gujarat can its own model. If you think of implementing the model that has been successful in Gujarat in Assam, it may not work. Assam should have its own model of this one a business model, depending on, because the a common consumer in Gujarat probably is much more richer than somebody in Assam. Then our financial model also have to be designed accordingly, right? So while this federal government should have a boundary condition because they are providing the subsidy, or they are overall supporting the program, but each state can have its own way of implementation, own time frame of implementation. I must say here that the 40 gigawatt target that was set for the rooftop solar, which has now been extended till 2026 as part of the solar mission, this target was set at the central level and the states were not consulted before setting the target, and that's why we could achieve only 10 gigawatt or 11 gigawatt, something like that, out of that 40 gigawatt. Now the states have given their target, and probably now by 2026 we would be in a better position to achieve the target. So it is very important in a country, vast country like India, the the collective wisdom of the state and of the federal government uh, is important, along with the consumer associations and the industry, to make it successful.
I agree with the collective wisdom part, and I like to believe that that particular collective wisdom that you're talking about should be replicated not just for rooftop, but a lot of electricity sector
Absolutely.
schemes for a resounding success.
Absolutely. And
But
just add
yes,
a
so
point, and just quickly add another point before
yeah,
we
sure.
this one. And again, we should
Hmm.
not see the grid as a competitor to the decentralized or the distributed renewable energy. We should see the grid as a what I call it complementary convergence of system. So we should see that both can coexist, taking advantages of both the sector, the grid and the distributed renewable energy sector, and whichever is more feasible, we should implement. If at the household level distributed renewable energy, I have a roof and I can implement a rooftop solar, I should go ahead and implement a rooftop solar. But for a large industry, they need huge amount of electricity, and for them, maybe a rooftop solar may not be able to provide all the electricity, and they have to get electricity from a utility scale power plant. Then be it, then they will get that electricity from utility scale power plant. So it should be a mix of both. Whichever technology is better suited for whatever condition, we should go ahead with that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this very interesting conversation. I for one can say I learned a lot about DRE and the sector as a whole. So thank you again for joining us here. And as I could gather from the conversation, the journey for DRE in the country has just started. Late though, but has just started. And I'm sure there would be a lot of interesting developments in this sector to watch out for, and for us to get you again on this podcast to understand more. But thank you again for joining us here on the Indian
Thank you.
Energy
Thank
Hour.
you for the conversation. Absolutely. I think the journey has just started. So we should now, uh, on this one, put our seatbelts on and wait for the flight to take off.
So true. Sure. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the India Energy Hour. Subscribe to this channel to never miss an update. To drop us a feedback, visit our website or write to us at theindiaenergyhour@gmail.com. We are on Twitter. You can follow at TIEH_podcast and get in touch with the two hosts at Shreya_J and at Sandeep Pai.